Last month we covered the Vita version of Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012, noting how it was a pretty nice achievement for the time over a decade ago. But handhelds have changed a lot in those 11 years. The Steam Deck and other PC options are now a thing, offering experiences that not only match what that game had, but also with much prettier and smoother performance. So let's go back to that 2012 Need for Speed entry and see how it fares today. Here is how the Steam Deck can handle Need for Speed Most Wanted 2012. Let's start by just running it. Most Wanted is a bit finicky with Linux, so you'll want to go with Proton to get it to boot up. And even the Proton versions are a bit difficult, with many of them still not letting it boot. I currently use Proton 8-16, which gives the game a lengthy startup, but runs fine once it's up and going. And let's talk about settings. This game has things mostly high by default, but disables super sampling and has geometry detail on medium instead of high. And with it like this, the experience is perfect. A never-ending 60 frames per second even when going through high traffic crashes. Something I've noticed is pretty much the best way to test the performance. But if you want to go higher, what you want to mess with are super sampling or anti-aliasing and ambient occlusion. The latter affects the performance a great deal. For example, cranking super sampling up to the max brings the frame rate down to the low and mid 30s with occasional drops into the 20s. But drop ambient occlusion and it will shoot up to the 50s with occasional drops into the 40s. Now, if you want 60 FPS, you can either leave the game as is with ambient set high and super sampling completely turned off, or you can turn the super sampling to 2 times and turn ambient off. And you can't really have both. Even with medium ambient occlusion, you'll get drops into the 50s during crashes. So if you want perfection, you gotta choose one or the other. But if you're not married to 60 FPS, you could get a stable 30 out of ambient on medium and sampling on 4 times. Or lock the deck down to 40 FPS with sampling on 4 times and ambient turned off. It all depends on what you want to do, but in my experience, super sampling gets rid of jagged edges around parts of the car model and ambient occlusion does not. So if you want the game to look as good as it can, I'd go for sampling over occlusion. And that's all I got for performance. As for battery life, you get a surprisingly small amount out of Most Wanted. I'm using a launch model Steam Deck and not the new OLED model. And on that initial model, you get about an hour and a half out of high brightness and closer to 2 hours on lower brightness. Now, as we wrap this up, would I recommend Need for Speed Most Wanted to Steam Deck users? I would. You can't max out everything and still get a perfect 60 FPS, but you can still get there and have this game look gorgeous on the go. Something that seemed like a pipe dream when the game came out on the PlayStation Vita 11 years ago. And that's all I've got for you today. I'll be back soon with more Steam Deck performance and reviews. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.